What they ran into, 30 seconds later, was the Lathians. 3 came out of the forest from the west with 1 and 2 other Strand members that Maddox hadn't met, and they were moving with the low, efficient Lathian sprint that covered ground in a way that made human running look conversational by comparison. 3 registered Maddox's group at approximately the same moment Maddox registered him. There was a half-second of mutual processing. "You're early," 3 said. "So are you," Maddox said. "Sentinel deviation," 3 said. "They began pattern breaking approximately 4 minutes ago, before your team entered." "They changed pattern before we went in," Ham said. "Yes," 3 said. "The pattern deviation does not appear to be a response to your entry. It appears to be a response to something else." "The tower," Maddox said. "Something changed at the tower." 3 looked at him. In the forest behind 3's team, something moved, large, fast, not Lathian. Sentinel-1 came through the canopy line at speed that didn't match the measured patrol efficiency of before. It moved differently now, not a program executing a pattern, but something with a direction, a purpose, oriented directly toward the combined human-Lathian group. "Run," 3 said, and he didn't need to say it twice. What followed was a period of time that Maddox would later describe in his log as approximately 15 minutes, and which felt, in the experience of it, approximately like the entirety of his adult life, compressed into a sequence of very specific decisions about which direction to go and how fast. The forest was not easy terrain at speed. The amber canopy was beautiful, and the undergrowth was enthusiastic, and the blue-violet ground cover discharged at random when stepped on, which it had not done before, and Ham said several words during this period that were not in the standard ISV mission vocabulary. 3 sentinels in pursuit, spreading laterally, driving the group north and west in a pincer that was not random. A coordinated push that separated them, the forest working with the sentinels in a way that felt deliberate, the ground cover discharging underfoot at moments that caused stumbles and direction changes that funneled them apart. Maddox was with 3 when the separation happened. He didn't notice it immediately. One moment the full group was within visual range. The next the forest had taken Ham and Sable and Cass east, and Maddox and 3 were going north, and there was a sentinel between them and anyone else. 3 took a hit from the sentinel at close range, not a weapon discharge, a physical impact, the sentinel's frame catching him across his left shoulder with the impersonal force of something that had no concept of restraint. 3 went down to one knee. He got up. He was moving. But his lattice organ, Maddox could see, had gone dark at the nape of his neck, where the luminescence should have been faint and steady. 3, Maddox said. "You're the ridge." The impact compromised the relay function, 3 said, without slowing. "Temporary. I cannot reach 1 or the strand. We are isolated." "Can you run?" "Yes." "Then run," Maddox said, and they ran. The cave was not on any survey map, because it was small, and its entrance was concealed by a curtain of hanging amber fronds that looked like everything else in the forest, and gave no indication of the space behind them. Maddox found it by accident, which was to say he found it by running into the fronds at speed while not watching where he was going, discovered there was rock behind them, discovered the rock had a gap in it, and made the decision in approximately 0 seconds that the gap was preferable to the sentinel that was 12 meters behind them. They went in. The cave went back 6 meters into the rock and then curved, and in the curved section they stopped and listened and heard the sentinel system's pause outside, and then, after 43 seconds, move away. Maddox counted the seconds. 3, beside him, was doing something with controlled, focused breathing that Maddox had not seen a Lathian do before, and which he suspected was the equivalent of managing a significant amount of pain without producing any of the usual signals. "How bad?" Maddox said quietly. "The shoulder joint is," 3 paused, "structurally functional. The lattice organ is disrupted. The impact transmitted through the shoulder to the cervical relay. It will recover." "How long?" "Unknown," Hours, possibly. The relay filaments need to re-establish. It is not a process I can accelerate. So we're here for a while, Maddox said. Until the lattice function returns sufficiently to signal location, 3 said. Yes. Maddox sat back against the cave wall. He looked at the entrance, the amber fronds hanging still outside. The forest was loud in its constant way, a wall of sound that was both reassuring and opaque. You couldn't hear a sentinel in it until the sentinel was close. The others, Maddox said. One will lead them, 3 said. One knows these situations. Ham doesn't, Maddox said. Your engineer has demonstrated a capacity for unorthodox solutions, 3 said. One will adapt. Maddox thought about Ham in the forest with One and Sable and Cass. He thought about the sentinels adapting and the ground cover networking, and whatever had changed at the tower that had kicked the sentinels out of their patrol pattern in the first place. He thought about the communication tower, transmitting something they couldn't read to somewhere they hadn't identified. 3, he said. The sentinel pattern deviation. It started before we went in. Something at the tower changed the sentinel's behavior. Yes, 3 said. The tower is transmitting, Maddox said. The signal changed, something responded, and when it responded, the sentinels changed pattern. 3 was quiet. Maddox had learned to wait for that kind of quiet. The sentinels are not autonomous, 3 said finally. They receive instruction. From the tower, Maddox said, or from whatever the tower is talking to. The extraction complex has been running for centuries, 3 said. The sentinels have been maintaining it. They have been receiving instruction for centuries. From something that's been out there for centuries, Maddox said, that nobody has found or registered or encountered until a pirate ship had stolen coordinates and an unknown vessel started destroying ships in the corridor with weapons made from the compound this place produces. The cave was very quiet. Outside, the forest was very loud. 3, Maddox said. What do you think the directive is going to do with this? The directive has not yet dissolved, 3 said. It is at day 38. That's past the record, Maddox said. Yes. Is that? Should I be worried about that specifically? A directive that cannot resolve is a directive that has encountered a problem for which its current model produces no viable outcome, 3 said. The Kethic Codex is explicit about what this means for the model. The model has to change, Maddox said. The model has to be rebuilt, 3 said, from the point at which it failed. They sat with that in the dark of the cave, while the forest moved outside. Something large passed within 2 meters of the cave entrance. It didn't come in. The fronds moved and settled. After a long moment, Maddox exhaled. Right, he said. While we wait for your relay to come back online, tell me about the continuances analysis, the compound. What did they actually find? You have the report, 3 said. I have the formal report, Maddox said. You have what 3 thinks, which is frequently different from what the formal report says. A pause that in the cave's darkness had a different quality, not computational, something closer to the pauses Maddox associated with 3 deciding how much to give. The compound's energy transfer coefficient, 3 said, at the concentrations present in this system, if weaponized at scale, would produce a discharge capable of disabling a Vartha-class vessel. Maddox was quiet for a moment. A Vartha-class was the Lathian dreadnought equivalent, the ship class that contained dozens of mines in deep convergence. The ship class whose appearance in a system meant the directive had already decided that system's future. Whoever has been extracting this compound, Maddox said, has potentially been building toward something large enough to threaten your biggest ships. For centuries, 3 said. Yes. The cave was very quiet again. How's the shoulder? Maddox said, because he needed a moment before the next thought. Structural function is maintained, 3 said. That's not what I asked. A pause. It is uncomfortable, 3 said. With the specific reluctance of a Lathian making a concession to physical reality they prefer to classify as irrelevant. Yeah, Maddox said. Sorry, I should have seen the sentinel coming. You did not have the angle, 3 said. I did. I assessed the impact as preferable to the alternative trajectory, which would have taken it into your path. Maddox stared at the cave entrance for a moment. You moved into it, he said. The calculation was straightforward, 3 said. 3. It was straightforward, 3 said. Your species does not currently have a replacement. The corridor situation requires your continued function. The calculation was straightforward. Maddox sat with this. He opened his mouth. He closed it again. He thought about several things he could say and discarded them all. Thank you, he said. 3 said nothing. The lattice organ at the nape of his neck flickered very faintly, the first sign of returning function. They sat in the dark and waited for it to come back. Ham's experience of the same period was, by his own later description, an education in the specific horror of being lost in an alien forest with a Lathian who communicates telepathically and a Gassic who has gone completely feral for the local plant life. He and Sable and one and Cass had been pushed east by the Sentinel spread, which one had identified as a deliberate flanking maneuver and responded to by taking them into the canopy layer. The trees were wide enough, the lower limbs accessible enough, and the Sentinels, which operated at ground level, could not follow. Ham had climbed with the enthusiasm of a man who had decided that altitude was better than electricity, and had not looked down until they were 8 meters up, at which point he looked down and then specifically did not do that again. Cass had not climbed. Cass had simply not been where the Sentinel was looking when it passed below, which was a Gassic capability that Ham found both impressive and deeply unsettling. Where were you? Ham had whispered. Cass had pulsed. Here, I was here. Ham had decided not to pursue this. One had gotten them out of the canopy when the Sentinels moved on and had communicated their direction in the efficient Lathian way, which was to simply start moving in the right direction and expect everyone to follow. Ham followed. Sable followed. Cass did not follow. Cass was now crouched at the base of a large cluster of blue-violet ground cover, and Cass had placed both hands flat on 2 separate plants, and the plants were discharging. And Cass was not moving. Cass, Ham said. Cass pulsed. The Carlo device, struggling with whatever frequency Cass was currently operating at, rendered it as fascinating. Cass, Ham said again, louder. Cass pulsed. The network structure is more sophisticated than I initially assessed. The discharge is not purely bioelectric. There is a computational element. Ham looked at Sable. Sable looked at Ham with an expression that said, I have no framework for this either. One said, from 10 meters further along the route, we must move. Tell that to the Gassic, Ham said. One walked back, looked at Cass, and looked at Ham. He is interfacing with the plant network, one said. I can see that, Ham said. The Gassic's bioelectric field is compatible with the network's discharge frequency, one said. He is not being harmed. He is communicating in some sense. With the plant. With the network. Ham stared at Cass, perfectly still, both hands on the ground cover, the plants not discharging randomly now, but in a slow, rhythmic pulse that looked nothing like their defensive behavior and everything like something else. Cass, Ham said, I need you to stop communing with the alien flora and walk with us. Cass pulsed. 1 moment. We don't have 1 moment. Cass pulsed. 2 moments. Cass. Cass lifted his hands from the ground cover. The plant's rhythm slowed and stopped. Cass stood, which he did with the particular grace of a species whose vertical orientation was a choice rather than a structural requirement, and looked at Ham with what Ham had come to recognize as Cass's version of satisfaction. The Carlo device rendered. The plant network is not autonomous. It processes and distributes information across its distribution area. I was reading the most recent input. I have a sample. He extended something, a small cutting from the ground cover, root system intact, wrapped in what appeared to be a gasic material Cass had produced from somewhere on their person. The plant was still faintly pulsing. You took a cutting, Ham said. Cass pulsed. The Combine will find this very interesting. Did touching the plant hurt you at all? Ham said. Cass pulsed. No, the frequency is compatible with gasic bioelectric function. It was, in fact, pleasant. Ham looked at the sky through the canopy. He looked at one, who was watching this exchange with the focused attention of a Lathian adding new data to an existing category. He looked at Sable, who was watching Cass with the open, assessing expression she used when she was going to have something important to say in about 12 hours once she'd finished processing. Right, Ham said. Everyone's fine. Nobody got electrocuted. We've got a plant sample and whatever Cass just learned from the network. We're in an alien forest and we have no idea where Maddox is. Let's find him. One said, I am working on locating 3. When his relay function returns, I will have their position. And until then. One looked at him. Until then, he said, we move in the direction that keeps the sentinels behind us and wait for the signal. Simple, Ham said. Easy, just a walk in the woods. Something in the canopy above them made a sound that Ham still did not have a category for. That's new, Ham said. Move, one said. They moved. The communication tower appeared at dawn. 3's lattice organ had been returning to function in the last hours of darkness, faint at first, enough to reach one at extreme close range, then gradually stronger as the relay filaments re-established. By the time the amber forest began to show light through the canopy, 3 could reach one at 3 kilometers. One's response was immediate and directional, northeast, 30 minutes. They had left the cave at first light. The forest in the early morning had a different quality. The sound layer shifted. The fauna moved differently. The amber light came through the canopy at angles that made the blue-violet ground cover glow in a way that would have been beautiful if Maddox hadn't been watching it very carefully for any sign of sentinel movement. He saw the tower before 3 did, which surprised him. Then he registered that 3's lattice organ was still recovering, and his full-range peripheral awareness wasn't there yet. 3, Maddox said, very quietly. 3 looked. They both stopped. The tower stood on a cleared slope of the northeastern mountain face, in a space where the forest had been not cut, not burnt, but moved back, as if the vegetation had retreated voluntarily from the structure's footprint. It was tall, perhaps 30 meters, composed of the same material as the extraction complex in the cavern, that purposeful, categorically unfamiliar construction that had no match in any database. It had no visible power source. It had no apparent moving parts. It simply stood and transmitted, and the signal it was transmitting was visible to 3's recovering sensors as a faint interference pattern in the local electromagnetic environment. That wasn't here on Ham's previous visit, Maddox said. Or it was shielded, 3 said, and is no longer shielded. Why would it stop shielding itself? 3 was quiet for a moment. Because something has changed, he said. Something that makes concealment less important than transmission. Maddox looked at the tower. He thought about the sentinels breaking their patrol pattern. He thought about the plant network receiving input from somewhere. He thought about the crates, packed and waiting, ready for shipment. It knows we're here, Maddox said. Not just the sentinels. Whatever is at the other end of that transmission, it knows. It has known, 3 said, since your engineer's first visit, possibly since the Knot Nebula formed, possibly before. Maddox's comms device activated. Ham's voice. Cap, we've got one here. We've got your position from 3's signal. We're 12 minutes out. Are you intact? Intact, Maddox said. 3 has a shoulder situation, but he's functional. Ham, I need you to see something, but quietly. Don't approach the cleared slope. Stay in the tree line. What are we looking at? The tower, Maddox said. It's active. A pause. The signal changed. We think so. We're recording. Don't. Ham, don't let Cass go anywhere near it. Another pause longer. That's going to be a negotiation, Ham said. Have the negotiation, Maddox said. Cass can observe from the tree line only. Cass's voice, faintly, in the background of Ham's channel. The collar device rendered it as, I accept this limitation on a temporary basis. Good enough, Maddox said. They recorded for 18 minutes. The tower transmitted steadily. The signal was dense and structured and completely unreadable with current tools, but the recording was clean, better than what Ham had captured on the fly during the first visit. Maddox watched the tower and thought about centuries of operation and crates ready for shipment and a communication system that had chosen to reveal itself, and he thought, this was a decision. Whoever or whatever is at the other end of that signal decided to stop hiding. He thought about what you stopped hiding for. He thought about the directive at day 38, unable to dissolve, its model inadequate for the problem it was trying to solve. He thought about a compound that could disable the Lathians' largest ships, being extracted and stockpiled for centuries. 3, he said, we need to leave, now. Today, not because of the Sentinels. 3 looked at him. Because whoever is on the other end of that transmission knows we're here, Maddox said, and we just got more data than we had yesterday, and we need time to look at it before they decide to respond to our presence in a way we're not ready for. 3 looked at the tower, at its steady, patient transmission. Agreed, he said. Maddox got Ham on comms. We're extracting, full team. Shuttle pickup, meet at the southern clearing, 20 minutes. Thank God, Ham said. I mean right, 20 minutes. Ham, the compound crate sample, the packing material reading. Got it, Ham said. Sable pulled a surface sample before we had to run. It's in the kit. Good, Maddox said. Let's go. They went. The tower transmitted behind them as they moved through the forest, patient and steady, its signal going somewhere they couldn't yet follow. The blue-violet ground cover glowed faintly in the morning light and did not discharge as they passed through it, either because the network had decided they were not a threat or because it was reporting their departure to something else. Maddox decided not to determine which. The shuttle broke atmosphere with all 4 humans, both Lathians, and 1 Gasic holding a live cutting of bioelectric alien flora that the collar device rendered Cass's feelings about as promising. Yara had the Kashin in close approach orbit and brought them in without ceremony and with the particular efficiency of someone who had been tracking 6 separate ground signals across an alien planet for 11 hours and was very ready to be done. Ham came through the airlock first, sat down on the nearest surface in the Kashin's loading bay, and stared at the ceiling for 30 seconds. Maddox came in after him. Good, Maddox said. No, Ham said, not good, complicated, but he stopped. We got everything. The crate sample, Cass's reading on the plant network, your recording of the tower, 6's compound analysis from last time, the Sentinel adaptation data. He looked at Maddox. That's a lot, actually. It is, Maddox said. Is it enough? Maddox thought about the tower, about the crates, about centuries. It's a start, he said, and it's more than whoever is on the other end of that signal expected us to have, I think. Is that good? Ask me in a week, Maddox said. Sable appeared in the bay doorway. 3 is in the medical bay, she said. His shoulder will need attention, but he is managing the situation with characteristic understatement. Aye, Ham said, which means he's in pain and pretending it's a data point. Essentially, Sable said. Cass pulsed from the corner where he had settled with his plant cutting. The network input I received contains what appears to be a sequenced transmission pattern. It is not random. It is structured. It may be a language. Everyone looked at Cass. The plant network, Maddox said. Is speaking. Cast pulsed. I do not know if speaking is the correct term. Transmitting. Structured transmission. I will need time to analyze the pattern. I estimate, he paused, and this pause had the quality of a Gassic performing a calculation that was larger than usual significant time. How significant? Maddox asked. Cass pulsed. Unknown, but I will need to remain in contact with the sample. The Combine will also want this data. The Combine will be informed, Maddox said. You have the sample. Let's get 3 sorted, get everyone fed, and then we all sit down with the recording and the compound data and figure out what we actually have. He looked at Ham. Ham looked at him. This is your fault, Ham said, chronologically. I know, Maddox said. Come on. Three's formal debrief of the mission to Maddox, conducted 2 hours later in the Cashian's briefing room with Three's left shoulder immobilized by Sable's field dressing, and a cup of tea in front of him that he was drinking in the specific way that Maddox had come to recognize as Six's influence, lasted 40 minutes, and produced an agreed list of conclusions and open questions. The conclusions: XRC-9001 was an active operation. The Sentinels were not autonomous. They received instruction from the tower, which received instruction from somewhere else. The plant network was a distributed information system with a structured transmission pattern. The crates were being shipped somewhere via a subterranean launch corridor without orbital detection. The compound's properties were sufficient to threaten Vartha-class vessels at scale. The tower had chosen to reveal itself. The open questions: who, where, why now, and what came next. The signal, Three said. The tower's transmission. What we recorded today versus what your engineer recorded on the first visit. Different, Maddox said. The frequency spectrum is similar, Three said. The content, if there is content, is different. The transmission pattern on your engineer's first visit was regular, repetitive, like a beacon. What we recorded today was not repetitive. It was responding, Maddox said. Possibly, Three said. Or it was initiating. Initiating what? Three looked at him. That is the question the directive cannot resolve, he said. That is why it has not dissolved. The model does not account for an entity that has been operating in this corridor for centuries without entering any registry, that has developed weapons capable of destroying Lathian vessels, and that appears to have begun something recently, in the time period that coincides with the first encounters in this corridor. The first encounters being us, Maddox said. The first encounters being you, Three said. The Cashian, humans, in this region of the corridor. Maddox was quiet. You think we triggered it, he said. I think the timing is not coincidental, Three said. I think the directive thinks the timing is not coincidental. I think the model is incomplete because whatever we triggered, or whatever observed us and decided to respond to our presence, is not something the model contains a category for. Maddox thought about Cass and the plant network. He thought about the tower revealing itself. He thought about something that had been running an extraction operation for centuries, patient and quiet, and had now started transmitting in a new pattern. We need the meridian and the continuance to look at this recording, he said. All of it. The tower transmission, Cass's plant network data, the compound sample analysis. Together, not separately. Agreed, Three said. And the directive, Maddox said. Whatever the current model is, this goes into it. Today's data. All of it. I will transmit a full report, Three said. The directive will receive it within, he paused, calculating, 3 hours. Good, Maddox said. He looked at Three's immobilized shoulder. How's the relay? Fully restored, Three said. And the shoulder? A pause. Also adequately functional, Three said. You took that hit on purpose, Maddox said. I made a calculation, Three said. You can just say thank you is a reasonable response here, Maddox said. I'm offering it. No strings. Three looked at him with the flat, iridescent patience of a species that had been making other species uncomfortable with sustained eye contact for 4,000 years. Keth Voren, 3 said, the applicable term. You're welcome, Maddox said. 3 drank his tea. Outside the briefing room viewport, the planet hung in the dark, beautiful, amber-forested, patient. Its tower was transmitting. Something was listening. They would need to figure out what before it figured out them. Personal log, Captain R. Maddox, ISV Cashin, XRC-9001 departure orbit. Ham wants it formally noted that he did not want to go back. He's noted it 6 times since we got aboard. I've told him it's in the record. I think he's going to keep noting it. What we have, a recording of a communication tower that chose to reveal itself. CAS's interface with the plant network, which appears to be a structured information system, possibly a language. A compound sample and full analysis. Sentinel adaptation data. Crate composition readings suggesting interplanetary shipment. And the knowledge that whatever is running XRC-900, one knows we've been there twice now and has started transmitting differently. 3 is going to be fine. His shoulder will take a few days. His lattice organ is fully restored. He told me the calculation was straightforward, and I believe him, which is a sentence I could not have said 3 months ago about a Lathian making a decision that kept me from getting hurt. The directive is at day 39. No directive in 4,000 years of Lathian history has survived this long. 3's revision request on the Antares moon model is still pending inside it. We've now added today's data on top of everything else it's trying to process. I keep thinking about the timeline, an extraction operation running for centuries. A compound stockpiled in quantities sufficient to threaten Vartha-class vessels. A communication tower transmitting to somewhere. And then humans arrive in this corridor, and the ISV Cashin hails a Lathian ship, and something begins to change. I don't know if we're the cause of the change, or the audience for something that was going to happen anyway. I don't know if the thing at the other end of that tower's transmission decided to start transmitting differently because of us, or because of something we don't know about yet. I know that the plant network is transmitting in a structured pattern that Cass thinks might be a language. I know that the crates are being shipped somewhere. I know that the Sentinels received new instructions from that tower. And I know that something that has been quiet and patient for centuries is not quiet anymore. I think we need to find out who it's talking to before they decide to talk to us in a way we're not ready for. Maddox.